Mr. President, I've said this over and over in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I'll say it here. I condemn violence, vandalism, including violence against law enforcement. There is no place in legitimate protest for that to occur. What is happening in Los Angeles is brought to my attention over the weekend is something that we need to address. However, addressing it effectively means not grandstanding, but giving law enforcement the resources they need to control the situation. Neither the governor of California nor the mayor of Los Angeles asked for the National Guard troops that President Trump is sending. And Governor Newsom said the decision to deploy the National Guard without appropriate training or orders risks seriously escalating the situation. What is clear is that President Trump manipulated these protests as an excuse to politicize the military and divert resources from pressing national security and disaster relief responsibilities. Mr. President, at the end of last week, a policewoman in Chicago was gunned down in the middle of the night. It happened several years ago with an officer named Ella French. I came to know her family and her mother. I came to really respect what a wonderful young woman she was. She gave her life as a Chicago policeman. Another policewoman lost her life at the end of last week. What are we going to do to stop violence on the streets of this country? Certainly devoting more and more law enforcement resources and people to a mass migration of people out of this country is not the highest priority. If there is a dangerous person, we should never let them in. If they commit crimes that are serious while they're here, we should throw them out, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. But this, look at what's going on in Los Angeles doesn't serve that purpose. To create fear and chaos, to further a divisive agenda with little positive consequences. The last time a president sent in National Guard for a domestic operation without a request from the state's governor was during the LBJ administration in the 1960s. President Johnson did it in '65 to protect civil rights demonstrators in Alabama. This weekend, the president wrote on social media that Los Angeles was, quote, invaded and occupied by, quote, violent insurrectionist mobs, close quote, and directed 3 of his top cabinet officials to take any actions necessary to, quote, liberate LA from migrant invasion, close quote. His FBI director, Kash Patel, also wrote on X, and I quote, hit a cop, you're going to jail. Doesn't matter where you came from, how you got here, or what movement speaks to you, end of quote. Interesting. Kash Patel, head of the FBI. He was also the choral director of the January 6th defendants who raided this Capitol, beating the hell out of the cops who were protecting my life and others and putting many of them at risk of serious medical injury, and some of them ultimately died from the experience. It seems President Trump and Mr. Patel forgot what happened on January 6th in the U.S. Capitol when a violent mob, summoned by a bitter, defeated former president, ransacked the Capitol complex. You may remember seeing these scenes, Mr. President. The insurrectionist mob, the rioters who came into the Capitol on January 6th. Looked through my desk, I could see them on C-SPAN, sat in your chair, aping away as they considered themselves the real patriots in America. On the first day back in office in his second term, what did President Trump do to these cop haters? He issued a blanket pardon for over 1,500 of them to release them despite their conviction. They had been convicted for that riot that took place in this building, including those who violently assaulted law enforcement officers. It appears the FBI Director Patel comment, if you, quote, hit a cop, you're going to jail, only applies to people who President Trump doesn't agree with. On Wednesday, we'll hear from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth at a Senate Appropriations Subcommittee hearing. I hope he's prepared to address this inflammatory deployment of the National Guard. Violence is never acceptable, but we shouldn't be making grandstanding moves to dilute the real impact that's needed from good law enforcement. I yield the floor.